Okay, welcome everybody. We are going to get our webinar number 2 in our NEDAS series underway right now. Welcome to the HetNet Virtual Strategies for the Next Big Network Trend. We are very pleased today to have this sponsored demo by DASpedia, presented by Dr. Hui Song, who is the CTO of RANPLAN. They do wireless network design, and we are very honored to have him here today with us. Before we get started, though, and I get and hand over the controls over here to Dr. Song, I'm going to make sure that everybody is aware of some of the upcoming events that are taking place between DASpedia and NEDAS. You may want to mark your calendars here. November 19th, just next week, DASpedia is hosting its own webinar, an introduction to digital DAS and CRI, presented by DALI. That's next week, 1 o'clock Eastern. December 2nd, NEDAS, the Northeast DAS Small Cell Association, is headed out to California for our social and holiday celebrations. If you have not registered, please look to do so. We do have a cap for that event, and we hope that we'll be reaching that very soon with all your help. And next year, DASpedia Wireless Training, DAS Seminar, and Networking events take place on January 11th. Learn more, there is a website there, www.daspedia.com/events. And without further ado, I am going to hand over the controls here to our presenter. Our presenter here again is Dr. Song. So welcome, Dr. Song. Thank you.
You're right. Can everyone see my screen now? Or to click anything? Here, sorry.
There.
Yeah, it should be all right now. Yeah, thanks.
Great.
So hi everyone. I think good afternoon to everyone. So here is basically 7 p.m. In the evening. And I think today my topic is a little bit different from the one that described. It's a little bit different. My topic is really planning visualizations across the HetNet. I think because visualization radio access network is quite a big topic, and I'm not going through details about what is a visualizer RAN or what kind of technologies a visualization RAN involved. Instead, I'm more focusing on the planning side. So how these visualization networks can be planned. And also, I am more focused on the distributed antenna system and the small cell area. I can't at all.
Great. So please, yeah.
Okay, because I saw some comments from the chat. Okay, that's okay. Let's do that. So firstly, give you a general description of our company and our products, because I think RANPLAN or IBNet is relatively new to all of you guys here. So about our company, we call ourselves RANPLAN, and basically it's really focused on radio access network planning. We're based in Cambridge, UK, and we are formed in 2006 from a leading wireless research group. In the early years, we are focusing on researching institutions and focusing on research projects in network planning and optimization. We are funded by a number of EU projects and also UK projects. In 2012, we basically moved our focus to more on commercial side. And we are basically focused on providing the industry network planning and optimization solutions, specifically for indoor and HetNets. And the product is basically called IBNet, which provides one outdoor and indoor small cell and HetNet planning capabilities, which includes 3D building modeling, building antenna system design and verifications, automatic planning and optimizations. We also provide a sophisticated interference coverage capacity simulations. And the advantages here is we also provide a user an indoor and outdoor HetNet deploy the capabilities. We do not only design indoor networks, but also indoor-outdoor hybrid scenarios, outdoor DAS or outdoor small cells, etc. and we use a product called IBNet Manager, so that it basically works as an online project repository, like manage the workflows, and also generating online reports for multiple projects. And that's really a quick introduction of our company and our products. So the next, we move to the slide topic, which is basically what is CRAN and what is VRAN. Virtualization, I think, is a big movement for the next stage. And in the slides, I generally put a picture underneath. Just try to give you a general idea what the visualized RAN looks like. So the key feature is basically, you can see is the location separation. So the first step here, we separate the radio remote heads from the baseband unit. Yeah. For the traditional station, you basically co-located the radio IF unit and also the baseband unit. And then later move to a distributed base station. Then you separate the radio remote heads and the units from each other, and between them you basically connected via fiber or Ethernet or wireless connections. Under of virtualized RAN is based the centralization of the baseband units. Either there will be a co-located different baseband units from different sites will co-located in a central location, and it also supports multi-rest pooling. And this is a feature of the virtualized RAN. And of the virtualized RAN is on the side between the mobile station and the base station here. So basically, enables separate the user and control plane, so that basically the control can be from the macrocell, and data can be transmitted from the small cells, etc. It means the separation from between uplink and downlink, so that you have a coordinated transmission. For example, link from the macrocell and uplink from the small cell. Yeah, so that battery of the mobile station can be saved, for example. And basically, we call it generalized purpose hardware. So basically, currently the base station units are all implemented on specified hardware, and the of network visualization is to move these functionality, or at least a part of the functionalities, onto a general rack, its features, and that was feature. And the fifth is basically it can also move the functionality between the core and the RAN. Previously, the RAN and core is quite separated from each other, and now actually some of the features like the application layer can be moved more close into RAN. So for example, for the caching, video streams can move to the RAN, so that the delay and the jitter can be minimized. And that's 5 key features difference from a traditional radio access network topology. And the above 2 points basically the difference between CRAN and VRAN. You might be involving the ideas of CRAN and the VRAN. Basically, CRAN is in the early come up earlier than the visualized RAN, and it's from down to care. So basically, it initially is from the distributed base station. Later on, the operators and the vendors generate a more generalized idea of a cloud RAN, for example. And it is also considered as the initial step towards VRAN. Basically focus on the network layout visualization, including separate radio units and baseband units, and virtualize or cloud band poolings for multi-racks. We can consider this base station hotels. And normally the boundary of RAN and core will not be changed for the centralized RAN for the moment. And the visual can be considered the next step of CRAN, And I think it's basically a more generalized idea of CRAN. It's actually followed up to down logic. So initially from the NFV, which is the network function virtualization, starting from the cloud, the core side, and then coming into the RAN side. And deeper visualization, which is I think a network functionalization. It actually functions from dedicated hardware to general purpose hardware. And it's a centralized part of the, for example, the core layer functionality into the RAN area. And basically now you would not see a clear boundary between the core and the RAN. Yeah? So that's the CRAN and VRAN here. The next slide explains the motivations and the challenges for adopting the CRAN or visualizer RAN in the current system. And this is the picture of the motivations or the drivers for the operators to implement the CRAN network. So the top one is basically the cost savings, the network traffic management, and the other two is all, I think, related to cost savings, the easier deployment and the low power consumption. Yeah. And above, I basically listed the details here. So the first, I think the top priority is the driver is the saving cost. Using the CAPEX and OPEX, for example, the centralization of the baseband units, then it can reduce the rental and reduce the power consumption. Also easier the deployment of the remote radio heads. Also due to the centralization, the OPEX would also be reduced. Yeah, and it can also improve the spectral efficiencies. Basically, when the baseband units are sitting in the same areas, then basically the communication between each other would be more efficient by connections. So also features like coordinated multi-point transmissions comp, and also regulations, and can be and also advanced interference coordination methods like EICIC can be implemented efficiently, and it can improve resource utilizations. Imagine you have multiple venues, for example, resident areas and business areas, and the capacity would fluctuate from time. For example, for the daytime, you would expect high demand traffic from the business area and the low demand for the resident area, and vice versa. And the centralized RAN can enable the capacity dynamics. So basically, dynamically allocate the resource to a proper area that requires traffic, for example. And it somehow also proves that it fits into the 5G structure as well. And on the other hand, the challenges. The biggest challenge I'd say is the legacy RAN migrations. So the operators would have quite a big scale of legacy RAN. And the question is how to migrate from the legacy RAN to the centralized RAN. Currently, it would reduce the feasibility and also increase the cost. Yeah? And another is basically the front haul availability. The current centralized RAN normally would require a fiber CPRI protocol with a quite high capacity demand, and it's always available for the moment. And another challenge for the front haul is basically the standards is not clear yet. The current commonly used is CPRI, but we need to define an open standard. The one candidate is called OI, Open Interface. And the migration path for vRAN is not very clear at the moment. Apparently, virtualized RAN would not be a fixed solution. So operators would need to think about what kind of RAN migration paths they should follow. And then is about 5G future-proof, because the 5G currently is not clear yet. So it's more even difficult to prove that vRAN fits the 5G. The challenges for CRAN and vRAN. Next few slides, I would describe some changes in the small cell and the DAS area according to the adoption of CRAN in their fields. So first is the small cell. According to the small cell forum, they state that cloud RAN and small cells have often been presented as alternatives, and they believe that virtualization techniques can be applied to small cell architectures. And basically, this is the picture shows the new proposed layout, the class CRAN-based small cells. It's quite similar to the one I presented previously. It's basically the small cell, remote small cell, what contains the radio heads, and the centralized small cell would contain the baseband units or the baseband pooling, which are similar. The activities that are happening and the major challenge or a major purpose for adopting the CRAN for the small cell world, I think, is to reducing the interference and the mobility. Because previously, small cell is basically considered as an independent base station, and it will basically generate quite a lot of interference between the small cells and also between macro cells and small cells. And feature for the small cell deployment need to address the interference and the mobility. And I think the CRAN structure would help a lot for the small cell deployment. And activities for the small cell world on the front haul is basically they're investigating the layer decomposition for the front haul, because the current CPRI-based front haul requires quite a lot of capacities. So they are testing basically different decomposition from, for example, upper layer physical division, or separate from MAC layer to physical layer, etc. And basically, these are under investigation. Capacity dynamics, they are basically trying to enable the interworking and the resource sharing between the remote small cell nodes. And the key is the traditional small cell will not disappear, but basically it will still be very useful for small venues. The venues for office, 1 or 2 small cells needed for the coverage, for example. And some type of small cells will become essential or very important for large venues and outdoor deployments. A use of larger is basically not necessary to be in a very large venues like airport or stadium. Instead, it could be some enterprise venues. Or another case is outdoor deployments, which you can call it metro small cells. In case interference management between the macro cell and the small cell is quite important. Next slide is about the change in the DAS world. So they're also moving towards the CRAN structure. According to the Center Philly Consulting, they said basically DAS deployments can be considered as an instance of micro CRAN because baseband processing is separated from the antennas. Basically, that's partially true. And for traditional DAS systems, the base station actually contains the baseband units and the radio units inside of one equipment. Although the antenna is distributed, but you don't have the flexibility to dynamically relocate the resources to different antenna points, for example. So that the challenges or the drivers here for the CRAN option in the DAS world is to reducing the complexity and adding flexibility. So reducing the complexity for supporting the capacity dynamics, and it is the deployment compared with the traditional, for example, in a fiber active distributed internet system, in which you can planning the capacity of cell sectors for the view, but basically you have very limited flexibility to change your plan or dynamically change your plan. And so, on the front haul investigations for the DAS worlds, I think activities is to study the some advanced CPRI fiber over Ethernet, or use WDM for the CPRI transmission. Implementing the capacity dynamics in the test world, I think that what they're currently doing is to enhance the dynamic resource allocations remotely, dynamically or semi-dynamically. For DAS vendors, they call these technologies smart DAS, yeah. And it would be next generation of distributed antenna system. And for the DAS world, the distributed antenna system will still be common for big venues. Not dispute both active and passive distributed antenna systems. And the series of DAS systems will penetrate DAS worlds, especially for enterprise and extreme large hybrid venues. For enterprise worlds, the complexity would need to be reduced, and also increasing the flexibility for a fast deployment for enterprise worlds, and also to the extreme large and hybrid venues where the capacity dynamics is required. Yeah, so something like a CD area, also the airports, for example. And a good description in the small cell world and the DAS world, you can see the difference between a distributed system and a small cell will not be very clear. Instead, the boundary will be blurred, and you can tell what is small cell and what is DAS basically. Strategies for the CRAN, basically considerations from the operators, including the cost and the return of investment. And due to the front haul requirements, you would also need to consider if the availability, the front haul is available on site, and you need to consider the traffic profile, if the traffic dynamics and also if the traffic is quite independent from the microcell. And we need to think about long-term strategies to support the virtualizer RAN. Besides the traditional deployed microcells or traditional distributed network system and small cells, I would say the CRAN deployment into 3 cases here. And the picture shows you the 3 cases. So you would see in the local data center or baseband pooling, basically sits just inside the venue, like airports, stations, and the towers. I would say there is no caching between the microcell layer. We call it basically the mini CRAN case. And that one is basically involved a number of buildings and also in a microcell layer. We call it basically local CRAN. The last one is a bigger one. Basically here, it involves multiple macrocells and small cells. And the data center poolings will support both small cells and multiple macrocells, which with metro CRAN. And in the slide, I will give you a detailed introduction of mini CRAN, local CRAN, and a metro CRAN approach. Yeah. So the mini CRAN, it really fits in the medium, large, independent venues with high capacity. Typical scenario would be airport, stadium, underground, or tower buildings. And basically, the scenarios could be single venue deployments. So you deploy the CRAN DAS or CRAN small cells for the single venue, or it could be multiple venue deployments. So, for example, the resident buildings and the business buildings all together for multi-venue deployment. Advantage for the mini CRAN approach is basically it fits in the semi-greenfield deployment. Does not involve the macrocell layer, so it's relatively easier to deploy a purely new greenfield distributed antenna system or small cell based on CRAN. And you would use just basically local front haul, basically fiber connections. You can actually check the fiber connections inside the building. and but it can provide the capacity dynamics within the venues. On the right side, you would see a scenario covering multiple venues. Capacity dynamics can basically dynamically relocate the resource based on traffic demand. Either the top the right hand side is basically the coverage purpose coverage. The where capacity dynamic, it can split the cells into three or three, for example, to cover the hotspots, or into an evenly covered scenario. This was CRAN is basically it will basically compete with the legacy DAS and the small cells because it's quite similar, because the DAS system or the small cell system would also provide the coverage to the venue and then involve the macrocell layer. And it would be not easy to distinguish the CRAN approach from these legacy solutions. And you would need the impact between the macrocell layer as well. And impact to the pure CRAN is not clear. Yeah, so that's a mini CRAN approach. And basically, in the study that is implemented in our software, RANPLAN. So we modeled a real building in 3D, and we implemented CRAN-based distributed antenna system. In this case, we used the FDD-LTE 2.6, and the remote heads is transmitted at 17 dBm, and the current user is 40, contains voice over IP and high definition video streaming users in this case. Two cases. The first case is basically we use one cell for all these radio remote heads, and the second case is basically we split these radio remote heads in 5 independent cells. And left hand side it gives you the general idea of the PDSH SNR in different scenarios. The first scenario, apparently you can see the SNR for these users is quite high, and it's about 3.5, which is not bad. And the total cell is only 1, and the served user is basically 40, and the total throughput is about 66 megabits per second, which really achieves its maximum. And the answer, you can see how is really reduced due to the intercell interference, because the COP or EISS is not activated in this case. And the throughput is actually higher, which is about 17 megabits per second. Basically, you have a larger baseband pooling to support more resource blocks to the users. And small cell, you would have for each cell, you would have about 8 users, and it's about a little bit less, which is a 16 megabits per second. Basically, the bar chart distribution of the throughputs. You can see that basically the left side is the voice over IP. You would see no difference between these scenarios. But for service, you can the users more users are reaching 10 megabits per second compared with the one case. And basically, can definitely improve the throughput in building the DRAM. You can see for the overall system downlink capacity is 300%, and for edge user is about 150%. The next scenario is the local CRAN, and basically it fits in large venues with high capacity demand, coupled with normally with one or several macro size. The typical would be campus, CBD, or hotels, and it's located under a macro site. And the units of macrocell and these small cells can be co-located in, example, with the macrocell site. And the macrocell plus indoor distributed antenna system, or macrocell with ODAS, or outdoor small cells like metro cells. Yeah. The right-hand side shows you the scenarios here. So all the baseband units were co-located in at the one cell site. And between these baseband pulleys to the small cells would either use the optical fiber or the microwave or the V-band connections. Yeah. To the advantages, the dynamics can be implemented between the macrocell layer and these small cells. And the interference coordinations between macrocell and small cells can be used, like EICIC, and improve the spectral efficiency by comp and the carrier aggregation between the small cell and the macrocell. And one macrocell and multiple small cells. Basically, these small cell or the distributed net system would quite to the macrocells, so it would the fiber connection or the wireless connection would be a bit easier. It's basically the front haul availability is a challenge here. Build a scenario in IBNet for this local CRAN. So a little bit different from mini CRAN. You can see for the local CRAN, you involve the outdoor environment and together with the indoor environment here. So we implemented, we basically CRAN-based distributed antenna systems in this target building in the macrocell environment here. So all these scenarios can be modeled in IBNet. Again, we use the FDD-LTE 2.6 macrocell with 3 dBm transmission and 17 dBm for the small cell. And we will basically study the performance with enabled, which is a CRAN feature. So this page basically shows you the performance difference. For macro only, is basically the above figure, and underneath figure is basically we enable the indoor CRAN system with comp enabled. You can see for the end user, it's reduced from about 20% to 5%, and throughput users from 3.5% to 6.2%. And to tell you a more clear idea here, so basically, for the only scenario, you would have a system tunneling throughput about 96 megabits per second, and increased to 300 megabits per second with the CRAN implemented. Macrocell throughput is actually also increased from 96 to 114 due to the coordination and also more. Also, that is basically low the offset to the small cells, and you see the downlink edge data rate is increased from 60 to 120, which is about 200% improved. Yeah, that's the CRAN evaluation. And the last, the metro CRAN approach, and the metro CRAN is basically a metro level. Involve the multiple macrocells and many NEDAS and small cells. The typical area would be city center, or if the city is quite big, then you need to imagine to divide the whole city into metro districts, and then within the districts, all the baseband units or baseband pooling would be coded for both macrocells and small cells. Yeah, it would be macrocells with distributed antenna systems or small cells. The value is similar to the local CRAN, but basically it's a more universal approach. So you have a general capacity dynamics between all the macrocells and the small cells. And also use a general advanced interference coordination and spectral efficiency improvement technology like ESIC, comp, and carrier aggregation. And the right-hand side picture basically generally shows you the metro CRAN topology. So in this, all the baseband units for all the macrocells is located in the data center, and it's connected to the radio remote heads for the macrocells, and also to the small cells. Yeah. And actually, you would need to invest quite a lot to set up the base station hotel, before you can really implement your distributed antenna system or small cells on the venue. And it's a general available fiber front haul, which is a big challenge for metro CRAN. Basically, a metro CRAN scenario is modeled in IBNet. In this case, we modeled 9 macrocell sectors, 3 small cells, which all the baseband units is co-located in the base station hotel. Again, we used basically FDD-LTE 2.6, and we ICIC and comp to see what kind of performance improvements in this case would have. And this shows you the performance statistics. We can see that the small cells can provide additional capacity. So the capacity is increased about 26. So underneath is basically the small cells without any comp or EICIC technology enabled. It can increase the overall capacity by 26. And when EICIC is enabled, it can additionally introduce another 22.5% capacity. And when activated, basically it can add another additional 31.5% to the overall capacity. So as you see that the metro C-RAN can definitely increase capacity efficiency with margin here. And I think that's all what I want to show you today. And thank you for your time.
Well, Dr. Song, that was very interesting. I did get a couple of questions in. Everybody has noticed I did mute you so that we had a clear recording of the presentation today. If you do have any questions, I suggest that you put them into the chat window and send them to me. I'm at iMiller Public Relations here. So anyway, I wanted just to let you know we do have a couple of questions here. So the first question in Dr. Song is, can RANPLAN software be used to design Wi-Fi propagation?
Yes, basically IBNet is a tool for providing the network design capabilities for HetNet. That definitely includes Wi-Fi. We can only modeling the Wi-Fi in the traditional way, like air magnets or other Wi-Fi deployment tools. But we can also considering the Wi-Fi offloading. So, for example, like LTE and Wi-Fi co-deployment. So the traffic offloading from LTE to Wi-Fi in IBNet as well.
Great, thank you. Let me see here. I do see that we have one other question that came in. Can you tell us about Open Radio Interface ORI, or who's driving it, and how is that different from CPRI?
Basically, CPRI is I think a vendor-driven standards which can trace back to distributed base station systems, which I think is proposed by Huawei, Ericsson, and other big vendors. But currently, operators are not very satisfied with the CPRI because it's not an open standard. And I think ETSI is proposed an open standard protocol, which is called ORI. The full name is basically Open Radio Interface, which I think can also compatible with CPRI. Yeah. But basically, yeah.
Got it. Okay. I do have a couple of more questions here. One question is, can RANPLAN plan both macro to in-building and in-building small cell to outdoor?
About HetNet, it's no longer just to consider the macro cell as an interference inside the building, or considering the small cells as an interferer to outdoor scenarios. In our tool, basically, you can model a detailed for both outdoor and indoor. And in the screenshots, you can see that we model the outdoor environments, including buildings, terrains, and also the macro cell size in the details. And also, we will model the indoor environment and the indoor network in details as well. And they do behave as a complete network. So that features like coordinated multi-point transmissions, EICIC, can be evaluated for both in and outdoor scenario in the same project.
Okay. There is a question here about how it works on a SON feature, SON feature.
Sure. It depends on what kind of song actually implemented. We basically support. We implemented a dynamic simulation that can support vendor-specific sounds based on the APIs. So different sound is implemented based on these APIs for different vendors that use the traditional sounds. Or when are moving to CRAN, then you would have an advanced centralized sounds for the network.
Great. Another question here. What is the typical bandwidth requirements for a CPRI connection?
CPRI, which basically separates the baseband units and the radio remote heads, I would say quite significant capacity requirements, which is about 2.5 giga for the 20 mega LTE system. I think a lot of vendors and actually proposing different kind of approaches, including some compressed CPRI, some CPRI over Ethernet, and WDM-based fiber connections, which can basically reduce the capacity demand for the CPRI. And alternative decompositions is also investigations by vendors and also by the small cell forum as well, so that the capacity demand front haul can be further reduced.
Got it. Another question here. What is the feasibility of digital DAS systems of kind that Dali Wireless, for example, is developed compared to analog DAS systems? And will digital DAS find its way into outdoor DAS deployment?
I think the question fits into the, let me see. I think it fits into the mini CRAN approach. The difference between, I think we can call it intelligent DAS or smart DAS. And basically it enables, I think, a CRAN approach, which the traditional DAS system cannot support. And another key advantage for a digital DAS could be the front haul. For example, the analog is normally for ROF, radio over fiber or radio over Ethernet, which have a distance limitations and also system number limitations on the analog connections. And so that's basically this limitation is removed, and you would have a much larger distance for the connections for the front. You can also enable CRANs between microcell and DAS systems easily.
Great. Just wanted to see if there are any questions. I do see there is another question here, but the context of it isn't going to be correct. And the question here is, how do you forecast the capacity on this case? So I think that question tied back into an earlier question in regard to SON. So it was regarding the SON question, and then how are you able to forecast capacity when you're doing SON?
I think basically the SON is implemented, vendor-specific SON is implemented based on our APIs. According to this scenario, you will see that we also modeling the different user behaviors into details. So with different service, we have a different packet model, for example, and also a different quality of service requirements. And we evaluate the capacities into considerations. So, for example, for one cell, you would have a better SIR, but actually the capacity is limited based on, because there's only one cell resource available, and one cells, although SNR is not so great, but basically it provides more radio resources compared with one cell scenario. You will basically have a much better capacity compared with one cell scenario.
Okay. And the same person just also wanted to know how the smart solutions work.
So you repeat the question.
So how do smart solutions work?
work?
We will certainly follow up with this individual offline. I did send that information over to Curtis to do so. I believe, again, it was in reference to the questions regarding SON forecasting, and then on a separate matter, how smart solutions work. But we could follow up with them directly after this.
I can kind of answer it in a short sense. If I understand it correctly, if the question is related to smart DAS or intelligent DAS, let's say that in ARPANET, we basically model the distributed antenna systems in a very flexible ways, so that all different kind of smart technologies can be modeled in the tool, including the capacity dynamics, and also, for example, EICRC and COMP. So the different solutions will have a different performance model in the tool. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Song. This has been very interesting indeed. We do appreciate the time that you took to give us some of these insights. This webinar has been recorded, and we will be making this recording available to all of the participants and anyone who also may have missed presentation. Questions, I'm sure, can be addressed directly to Dr. Song and his team. Curtis Bollinger, who's the Vice President of Sales in North America, has been on here. He did send over his contact information, which I shared in that window. You can contact curtis.bollinger@ranplanwireless.com. His phone is +1-913-237-5412. Again, just thank you for everybody. We have a couple of upcoming events. November 19th is the DAS-PETA webinar, Introduction to Digital DAS and the CPRI, presented by DALI. On December 2nd, the NEDAS California Social and Holiday Celebration comes to the Epic Roast House in San Francisco. And on January 11th, DAS Media Wireless Training will host a DAS seminar and networking event at the UC Irvine campus in Orange County, California. Without further ado, thank you for your afternoon, your time, and we look forward to presenting you with more web programs in the near future. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Bye.